Hey there, I'm Scott, and this is Tangents. Well, it is 9:45, 21:45 today. Want to record this because it's kind of a window that I have. Um, just kind of struggling to squeeze in time from time to time. I would really like to change that at some point, although obviously since this is like a hobby, it's not really something that I can just automatically carve out a decent amount of time for. What I would like to talk about today is actually, and the title is coming from something that I got in a discussion with somebody, I think it was yesterday or the day before. Basically, this discussion was centered around Tesla. And generally speaking, the full self-driving beta, Elon Musk's, let's just say, you could say wildly optimistic. I would say fraudulent, but call it what you will. His sort of pronunciations like, oh, we're going to have this thing right away and it's going to be, Now, I understand. They've been promising this full self-driving thing for years, right? And I also understand that it is a really hard problem. I don't think he appreciates how hard of a problem it is. Actually, I gather that just from, I don't know. The best, I always try to apply the principle of charity. Try to come up with the best possible interpretation of what someone says. And for him, it would just be that he's very naive and wildly optimistic about this stuff. I think that's probably overly generous, but whatever the case, at some point, when you start promising things and you start selling things, like when I got giant air quotes, full self-driving was 7K last November or so, almost a year ago. And now I think it's like 10K. And still, not really there. Not even close to being there. And there is a beta out there, and the beta is not great. I have a weird hobby of sometimes like I'm doing stuff that's not, it doesn't require like 100% attention, but it's one of those kind of mundane tasks that you just have to think enough about and focus enough on, but you can kind of have something in the background, and I will have these full self-driving videos on. And I've noticed a lot of them these are people, obviously they're people with Teslas, obviously they're people who thought it was worth paying, $5,000 or $7,000 or $10,000, whatever, for, again, giant air quotes, the promise of maybe someday getting something like level 3 autonomy. Musk claiming it's going to be like fully autonomous, like full self-driving as the name says. No fucking way in hell anytime soon. Not even. Level 3 is still aspirational. And I watch these videos and I don't know, I get kind of annoyed sometimes because, and I can tell some of the ones that I've been watching since last year, before I even had my car, these people were like super hyped up about this stuff and they're like, wow, we're finally getting the beta and it's gonna, and you can see the cracks. You can really see the cracks. They're still, a lot of people are kind of towing the party line and they're sort of, presenting things in a very positive light. But there are many issues that are visible in the best ones that I've seen. And it's interesting to me how much the person driving wanting to present it in a way, and I'm not saying that they're actively lying, but they really want it to be a certain way. So they're really framing it and really, like, I would say seeing it even with extremely rose-colored glasses. Things that are just not great, and they're just kind of saying, oh, it's much better than you would think. I've been getting tired of it, but even those people, I've been noticing kind of cracking. Like you get just a little wink that, maybe they're a little annoyed or maybe they're a little disappointed. maybe this isn't progressing as quickly as they would like, this kind of stuff. A couple days ago, I happened upon, I don't even know, I guess it must have just been a recommendation on YouTube. I happened upon this guy, and I don't know his name, Rococo or something like this. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. He's also doing this full self-driving program. And the difference is he's like bitching about it a lot, a lot. And especially he was very upset with Beta 10, which if you're not following this stuff, bear with me. But Elon was sort of saying, a while ago, like, oh, beta 9.2 is this, but beta 10 is going to be like fucking mind blowing. It will be ecstatic. It will be basically like an orgasm on blow, under the best possible circumstances with rainbows and, unicorns and all of this bullshit. And it's not, clearly. Clearly it's not. But this guy was like, holy shit, this is pretty fucking bad. And I saw it and it was so refreshing. Like, so fucking refreshing, because almost everyone I've seen with these things is just blowing a bunch of sunshine up the thing. And I will say, like, it is kind of impressive. I would love, honestly, having completely thoroughly shat on it, I'd love to be a beta tester for this shit. And it's not because I think that it's anywhere near being done. And it's not even really because I want to, help progress this. It's more just kind of curiosity. I want to see what it's like. I want to experience it. Part of me wants to just get annoyed by it. I've had beta iOS on my phone probably since I've had an iPhone almost. I've had beta Mac OS since it was OS 10. And in fact, my very first Mac OS 10, 10.0 was a beta, So I've been and that was like 20 years ago. I've had beta shit for a long time. I'm very comfortable with it. I very much understand it's beta. And especially here, I very much understand, like, this is not really there. This is kind of like aspirational at best. But anyway, I'm watching these videos and I'm really enjoying them because, it's like, yeah, I found somebody else who's also, this one's a woman. And I think she was in New Hampshire or someplace. Doesn't matter where. But, she's having a really fucked up time and disengaging constantly. Both of them have this thing where they're driving and then the car will go, and when I say this, I don't think I can convey, well, without blowing out your eardrums, I can't convey how unpleasant and awful this is. I'm in my car, and every drive, without fail, now again, I have the public release, I don't have the beta, but without fail, every fucking time I drive, there'll be a truck that passes way, way off in the distance, and they're well clear before I get anywhere near them, and the car's like, holy shit, we're gonna die. Like, screams at you. And this just, I swear it is fucking causing me hearing damage. Like, it is ear piercing. And, this alarm, and it's also, I think the most dangerous thing about it is it's the boy who cried wolf, right? You do this, you have all these false alarms constantly, and then if it was an actual thing, you start getting desensitized to it. You just, by nature, you're going to get attenuated, and you're not really going to notice something, and it's actually going to matter. Amusingly enough, a couple weeks ago, I was coming out of Dutch Brothers after I get coffee there every morning. I was coming out, going down the street, and some dude is jaywalking across a major, all the streets here are kind of major, it's like a 6-lane street. Dude's just jaywalking across it, car does fucking nothing. It would have just, I'm pretty sure it would have just like plowed the guy over if I let it do it. It consistently, if I drive through a school zone, which I do every morning, it would not recognize that the school zone, especially if it's a conditional speed limit where it's got the 35 with the lights flashing, it never recognizes that one. It never recognizes the 15 zones where they'll put up a sign in the middle of the road and says 15. If you left it to its own devices, you just plow through there at full speed. No idea that this stuff is going on. Now, granted, not the beta, but I don't think the beta is that much better. I watched a lot of these videos again, and even the good ones, you can really see the cracks. So anyway, I was on Twitter, as I often am, at least for now in this window of my life, on Twitter, and somebody says something not super flattering about Tesla. And then I'm like, yes, that, I totally agree. And you can't say anything negative about Tesla on Twitter without having at least a few of the fanboys. And one of these was a woman, but call them fanboys, whatever is the equivalent. Fangirl sounds somehow worse than, anyway, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to call them fanboy as a gender neuter term. But I don't know, maybe not. Anyway, get a couple of these people out there and they're just crazy, fucking crazy. They're like, oh, it's much better than you think. And then also, well, yeah, the beta is actually really good, and it's, you paid for, and I'll tell you, I understood when I got the car. I am not like saying I was under any delusion that it was going to be like tomorrow we're going to have a release and it's just going to work perfectly. My understanding last year, they have these beta videos out starting around, I think, October, November timeframe. I got my car and ordered it, I think, in November. And I saw these videos, and Elon is sitting there saying on Twitter that the winter release is going to be fire, the emoticon for fire. And so, and granted, I think this is the best con people in the world get you to con yourself, right? Not even actually saying that we're going to have this beta released. And again, I wasn't expecting it to be like a perfect working thing. I was expecting beta access or something, right? And so, you get that, you see this fire thing, and you're like, oh, I'm kind of getting hyped up about this and excited. Pull the trigger, get the car. The winter update came out late, and when it did, and one of the things that attracted me to Tesla was I, for years, have heard how, like, oh, you get these constant software updates, and it's like your car keeps improving constantly. So I was expecting, like, even at the very bare minimum, very fucking minimum, something, right? Some marginal UI improvements, some kind of like standard, major version update kind of things. So we get it, and it's basically exactly the fucking same. A couple of small graphic tweaks that are tweaks that are almost not noticeable, and I would say arguably worse. And then fart mode. And I literally mean like fart mode, like a fucking joke. And don't get me wrong, having a whoopee cushion mode for your car is kind of funny, I guess. I mean, the only thing I can think here, like I understand Elon really loves weed, like really loves weed. And he and his brother and some other friends are like constantly, as far as I can gather, they're just sitting out in the hot tub, getting stoned, and then they're talking about bullshit, and they're like, oh, Roko's obelisk, and or whatever the fuck it's called. And then like this, they're just pontificating about simulation theory, and they're like, oh, it would be so funny if the car had a fart mode, ha ha ha. And I mean, again, to me, like, if you've got everything else kind of on lock, and then you want to start adding some fun shit, be my guest. But when you're really actively not doing anything on the UI UX department, and you're fucking around with this beta so much, and it's not coming anywhere, and then you come out with fart mode after the winter update is going to be fire, fuck you is pretty much all I have to say. Like, just fuck you. And so, I was disappointed by that, let's just say. And then, he starts talking about there's going to be a beta button in this future update where you could request it. And I'm like, I'm so fucking gullible, to be fair. Like, I don't understand why, I make fun of people who fall for 419 scammers. Somehow, his bullshit over and over and over again, I still fall for it. Like, why? Why would you believe him after the 4th time, after the 5th time, after the 100th time. I think part of the problem is, of course, I remember watching a SpaceX video with Muse as the soundtrack, and it was like vertical takeoff, vertical landing, pretty fucking cool. And they did that. They actually have done that. I mean, not the full system that they showed, but in principle, yeah. Now, I will say this, vertical takeoff, vertical landing rocket is something that's been solved really probably since the 50s, certainly the 60s. The LEM, the lunar lander, was a vertical landing rocket, right? The Delta Clipper, DCX, they didn't have the full-size one, but that was a vertical takeoff, vertical landing rocket. This is a solved problem. As far as control problems go, it's not trivial, but it's basically an inverted pendulum and then some nonlinear stuff and some, again, not trivial, but solved. Getting to orbit, highly non-trivial, a lot of fucking performance, a lot of steering, a lot of this stuff, vectoring. But a solved problem, long since solved problem. Full autonomy in a car, in a completely unstructured environment, never been solved, and I have to say, I'm not sure that it will be solved anytime soon. I do think it's certainly technically possible. Obviously, we are in existence proof. The fact that our brain is able to solve this problem mostly, not perfectly mind you, but pretty decently, tells you that it is doable. Doesn't say how hard it's going to be, and it's going to be fucking hard. And the thing that I'm learning the most, I think, from watching these videos is, I mean, you always think of, and they talk about like corner cases or chasing nines or whatever the fuck. Corner cases sound like, oh, well, mostly we've solved the problem, but there are these few kind of edge cases that come up occasionally, but they're not really that big of a deal. The thing is, when you're driving, everything is fucking corner cases. And I think this is a thing that is very easy to miss. It's like, okay, here's a scenario that you will be in one time and potentially never again because it's very infrequent. If you have a fleet of enough cars, they'll run into it periodically, but you personally might not be in that situation again. And that's one situation, and then you're in another situation, and everything you're doing is a little different, a little weird. The signage is going to be different. The circumstances are going to be different. The conditions, the road conditions, if people are around, the noises, which I don't think the car factors in at all. And like so many things change so much. Solving that in general is very, very difficult. And I think the difference between like a vertical takeoff, vertical landing rocket and solving this is like the difference between playing tic-tac-toe and playing like 100-dimensional Go. Not 2-dimensional Go, like so high a dimensional Go that it's just fucking intractable upon intractable. Like the hardest problem you can think of versus, putting together some sticks. I'm not saying it's quite like that. It's certainly not impossible, but it's very, very challenging. And the fact that, and again, you're left with this idea, like, he came up with this robot thing. I'm sure, like, it's a solved problem to make a walking robot. It's not that big of a deal. It's a hard control problem. It does take some good mechatronics, but it's pretty much solved. If you're a grad student and you want to do control theory, certainly inverted pendulum is a big one. The double inverted pendulum, if you like some nonlinearity in there. But a walking robot is within the realm, right? It's not like a complete blue sky novel problem. Now, having a walking robot that does practical things for you in an unstructured environment, that's a much harder problem. And it's totally possible, existence proof, but it is really fucking challenging. And compared, the funny thing about that is, Tesla's or Elon's like, oh well, we're a car company and we're really a robotics company. And yeah, the car is a robot, but the car is on essentially one-dimensional branched networks. On a road, I mean, you can kind of veer a little bit left and right, but you're pretty much on a one-dimensional thing. And your controls are steering, brakes, and accelerator. Maybe, okay, niceties like lights and indicators and all this kind of stuff, but basically that's it. If you're talking about a walking robot, I mean, in terms of degrees of freedom alone, much harder problem. And it's not just that you have to walk around, which again, walking around an unstructured space and not falling, pretty much you could do it. Boston Dynamics has certainly solved this problem. Not an easy problem, but if you have a good team of engineers, you got it. Walking around and the classic one, whenever I've ever told anyone that I'm working on robotics, the one application that everybody comes up with, which I think is dumb AF, but people talk about it all the time, or it's like the extent of their imagination or what they've seen, but it's, could it go to the fridge and get me a beer? Every fucking person asks about this. And that problem is deceptively really fucking hard. Like, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. People give the example like it's, oh, there's no big deal. And you could certainly, if you're like a first robotics team and you knew the fridge you were going to use and you knew either the map or enough detail of the map of a place that you could figure it out, or you have a very, you have a lot of structure, you have a lot of information, you have few parameters, you can solve that problem. You can make like a cart that goes out and has some mechanism to open the door, grab the beer, close the door, put it on a tray, roll back out. It's doable, right? But do that in any house. Now, a person will go to a house and say it's a nice new house, and the fridge is made to look like a cabinet. So you go to the kitchen, everything just looks like a fucking cabinet. You as a person in that environment, go get me a beer. There's a beer, there's a fridge, you're gonna fuck around for a long time. You'll figure it out eventually, probably, but it's not trivial. Now, you put a robot in that situation, that robot has to understand enough about that unstructured environment, which is going to change. Like, even if 10 people have the same sort of built-in fridge, it's going to be different in every case. Every fridge has a different kind of handle. It has a different amount of force that needs to be applied. It has different, just all kinds of different parameters. You have to solve something that works in general for that. And again, you can, but it's hard. And compared to driving, much, much harder. Much harder. So anyway, getting back to this Tesla, like, why spoiled, Scott? How did you get this spoiled? I'm talking to these people on Twitter, and just going back and forth, and I'm saying, I said basically Elon was a fraud, or was fraudulently selling this thing, which I think is fair. Like, if you're selling something which is aspirational, I don't know, at some point you have to think, if you're paying for full self-driving, okay, it's on you. But also, if somebody's selling you something called full self-driving, even if you put a bunch of disclaimers down, even if you say this is totally not full self-driving, this is really just advanced cruise control, you're still calling it full self-driving. You're still charging 10 grand for this thing, which at the moment is, it's not even aspirational. It's not like you get that and you have beta access. It's not like you get to try it. It's like you have that in the hope that maybe one day God will bestow upon you the greatness of some kind of bullshit that they're going to call full self-driving. I mean, it's crazy, really. I'm a moron for having bought the fucking thing. I don't know what the hell was wrong with me. I mean, I do know what was wrong with me. I know why I got it. I'd still, like, if I had the beta access, I'd love it. I'd enjoy it every day. Although I know I'd be like the autonomy that I have already, I am more aware when I'm driving than if I was driving myself, which is not really what it's supposed to do, I don't think. On the freeway, I will say it is good enough to get you complacent, which will, to me is probably actually pretty fucking dangerous, because you get complacent, you stop paying attention, and then some corner case comes up, and then you killed somebody or you're dead. On the surface streets, it's not even good enough to get complacent. The beta sometimes, under certain circumstances, maybe, although I don't think so, even from the ones that I've seen that work well. And certainly not in a general neighborhood, in a general place. No fucking way in hell. But one day it will be, for sure. But anyway, I assume if I had the beta, I would be more hypervigilant. I'd be frustrated and pissed off about it probably, because it'd be like, why is this so shitty? And of course I know why it's so shitty, because their whole approach to solving this is just not really a great one. They're essentially just searching the future space of control, which I have to say, I do kind of wonder. They took out radar because they were explaining like, oh, radar is the reason that we get the phantom braking. And you start thinking about this and you're like, well, okay. It's true, radar will have false positives. If you have a big truck, it'll have a much stronger return than a small car. If it's like a flat, the side of a semi, big strong return. If it's a bug, which is nicely bent and kind of curved, much smaller return. So you can understand this is noisy data. The problem is that getting real information from noisy data has been a solved problem at least since the 60s. The Kalman filter is, I think it's from the 50s even. And there's much better stuff today than that. This was, just sort of a simple linear model for some information comes in, and then you're able to go back to the actual underlying state of the system. And you can do this with noise, and it has noise rejection properties. It has all of the, you just have to know the statistical structure of the inputs. So they were not able to fuse the radar and the vision data and the ultrasound and all this. And this makes me wonder, almost strongly suspect, like, are you guys doing any kind of like actual classical control theory, or what are you doing there? Or are you just, I think that if I had to guess, they're doing neural control and neural sensor fusion, which works, don't get me wrong. But it's one of these things where you're doing curve fitting instead of actually like taking math that's totally solvable and getting an optimal observer and optimal controller. They could totally do that. Now, it wouldn't be perfect, but you could sure as hell take that noisy radar data plus vision plus ultrasound and get better information. It's not like magically because you put in noisy data, you get noise out. It's not a garbage in, garbage out kind of situation. You can put in ridiculously noisy data, and just if it's Gaussian noise. Now, if it's not Gaussian noise, then it's harder, but you can still do it. But imagine it's Gaussian noise. With a Kalman filter, you can have one dimension that you're observing, like measuring, and you're putting a bunch of white noise on it. And then you can extract from that the derivatives, so several dimensions of that. And it's actually almost fucking magical how well this shit works. Now, it's not perfect, but it's not going to do things like randomly have a truck pop into existence way closer than it actually is. And this is part of why, like, it just makes me wonder a lot about, if they're not doing that, what else aren't they doing? That's just, it's kind of, now, I don't know, it's just me. But rolling back to Twitter. On Twitter, talking with people, and then we're just going back and forth, and I'm like, oh, this is fraud. And somebody's like, you're calling him a liar. You're calling my daddy a liar. But yeah, I mean, so I said, okay, could be a liar, could be delusional. Now it's not just that I'm calling him delusional. Now this is ad hom, according to this dude, which it absolutely is not. He said, you know, I mean, basically what I said is he's either lying or he doesn't understand how hard this is or and how long it's going to take. And the latter case is basically delusion. The other guy basically explained that, you know, maybe he's just overly optimistic to the point of being delusional. That's what delusional means. So, yeah, and again, not an ad hominem attack. It's literally just the definition and the word that is defined by what this fucking dude was saying. I'm going back and forth again, and some other person pops in, and this woman is, you know, also just like a fucking nutter with this Elon stuff. And I think both of these people have Teslas, and they're like, oh, I paid for the full self-driving too, and you know, it's totally worth it and all this bullshit. And then I'm like, you know, I find it really offensive, and I really would like to fucking have the beta access. And this woman was like, you're so fucking selfish. You're so selfish. You're so greedy. You know, how could you possibly want to have this early access program? You know, why should you get it? And I'll tell you why I should get it. I should get it because everybody who's a fucking idiot who bought it thinking that they could get it should get it. Or maybe, I don't know, another possibility, Elon could just stop fucking lying. He could just sit there and not say like beta 10 is like, I mean, he literally said, beta 10 is like gonna be fucking mind blowing. And, you know, another couple weeks, 4 weeks after that, we're gonna have it like public release. Now, granted, maybe 2 weeks from now, I will be driving it. Maybe it's going to be publicly released. It's not going to be publicly released. I don't believe so. Eventually, maybe, but I don't know. Now, it'd be fun. I would love to be proven wrong there, but I don't think I'm going to be. So anyway, I'm spoiled per this person on Twitter who got really upset with me and then blocked me, which is a weird move. You know, like, you get upset with somebody, you call them some names, you tell them they're spoiled, and then you're gonna block them. It's like, okay. Yeah, and also this person said, you know, like, I'm ashamed, I wish that you weren't a Tesla owner. It's like, well, that's great. Yeah, it's like, you don't deserve your Tesla. It's like, well, I mean, I gotta tell you, you know, honestly, if I could move someplace where I didn't need a car and I could get rid of the car, I'd fucking do it. You know, I mean, it's a nice car. Nice to have a car, but not having a car is actually like, I mean, don't get me wrong, where I live, you need a car. You could live without a car, but it sucks. In Phoenix, and especially like Gilbert kind of area, not having a car here sucks. But if you're in Paris or like central London or Brooklyn or New York or something, you know, it's kind of nice not to have a car. Now, still, it's nice to have a car, but not having a car, nicer. Wouldn't be that hard to imagine a world where, you know, you could do pretty much everything without a car. You know, I mean, there are some places in the world which are closer to that. I find it really depressing in terms of politics, just that we can't, you know, hope and aspire to that and then make it so. Like, it'd be so fucking easy. And I mean, here's another thing. The whole Elon Musk future of full self-driving and all this bullshit, solvable, but exceedingly hard, and also not very efficient. Like, you know, you have a bunch of people charging batteries and then using power in the batteries. Not nearly as efficient as, say, a subway train, where you're just powering it directly. Because every time you charge and discharge, you're losing power, you're losing energy. And the thing about a subway train is, like, automating a train, you could do it decades and decades and decades ago. And today you could do it very easily. Yeah. And actually automating a train on tracks is pretty hard, shockingly hard. because it's not just a control problem for speed, but you have to take into account a lot of safety factors. And, like there are things that just like when you stop, you have to stop precisely. Now that's a classical control problem, probably plus some nonlinearities and some other stuff, but pretty doable. But it's challenging. It's not trivial. It's actually like if you took the full self-driving team from Tesla and had them building trains, you could have a city that's like got fully automated trains that just whisk you away and do everything, and like have the best like optimal acceleration and optimal speeds around turns and all this kind of stuff. You could do that, and it would be a problem that would be worth doing or worth solving, and it could be done in about the same amount of time that they've been fucking around with this other thing. The other thing that they could do with, like, instead of full self-driving, which I think is a stupid thing to try to get. I mean, somebody else pointed this out, but Tesla is a nice, fast, zippy car. It's fun to drive. It's part of what's nice about a Tesla. You're going to get that, and then the aspiration is that one day you're not going to drive it. It's just going to drive itself. It's like, it's a little mixed up, a little weird. But what I would love to have, instead of full self-driving, is to have the car be basically a horse. Like, the horse, kind of knows what you want it to do. It's not going to do anything crazy. It's not going to like drive off the road. It's not going to crash into anybody. But like you're driving on the road, and you get a little sloppy, keeps you in the lane. You're driving on the road and somebody pops out, and then it does something like veer over here because it happens to know that there's nobody there, and it can do that and get out of the way, not hit them, do all this kind of stuff. There are 1,000 things you could do for like that kind of assistance that would be way easier than trying to solve full self-driving. They'd be there already. They would be massively more helpful and, just better all around. And it's annoying. Like that's and that's again in the context of a car. Having an autonomous city where you're just like able to walk around and get on trains and do things like that's awesome and better than a car. And it's also, like the Teslas in tunnels, dumb AF, versus trains, which can hold way more people, move them much faster, use less power, easier to run without people, or hell, have a conductor. It doesn't, it's not like it hurts. So it's just weird. I don't know why this is. It's depressing. It's like healthcare too. I mean, it's not like there's some, utopia that in the abstract maybe we can imagine it, but you can't really quite focus on it and determine what it would be. It's pretty fucking simple to understand how this works. It's pretty simple. Like you can go to cities where they are walkable and there are good trains. You can go to cities and countries that have good healthcare. And if we were not stupid, we would have good healthcare. We'd sit there and go, fuck, we're the wealthiest country in fucking history. These countries have much better healthcare than we do. Let's look at them, see who does it best, pick and choose the better parts, and then make our own thing that kicks everybody else's ass. Why not fucking do that? How is that a thing that's like, instead you have like, oh, well, what we're gonna do is subsidize the insurance companies, and then you'll have really expensive insurance that you'll lose if you lose your job, and that basically doesn't cover anything unless you have something that's really catastrophic. And even then, you're probably, at a certain point, you're kind of fucked because it's too much, and even if you had the insurance, it's not really gonna help. So, you have to be in this nice narrow window of something really bad happens, but not so bad. And, it's annoying. Like, why is this not a fixable thing? Elon just seems like a complete fucking lack of imagination. The Teslas in tunnels, the Tesla bot, all this stuff, full self-driving. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. Even the space stuff, and I like the space stuff. I like SpaceX. It's an annoying fucking thing about Elon because SpaceX is cool. Tesla's cool, other than the Bitcoin thing was not so cool. The autonomy thing and the lying about full self-driving, not so cool. But Tesla is still cool. And even solar is kind of cool. I like solar power. You know, I mean, I live in a place with so much solar power that you could actually power the entire country from Arizona. I mean, transmission losses and all that, but in terms of actual insulation, even with the current level of efficiency of panels, there's plenty here. And we have, I mean, of course, there's plenty here, but we don't use it that much. We instead build coal-fired plants and do stupid shit like that. But anyway, I think that is going to do it for me. I'm really tired, and I feel myself starting to lose track. You know, there's a certain point where it's like, this is all tangenty anyway, but there's still like tangents, but in a web that kind of coheres into something. And right now it's kind of like decohering. You know, it's just like I'm tired enough that it's not. I can feel it's kind of fading away. That being said, spoiled. Thank you very much, and 再见。